Hey, so for the second part of 2.1, we're going to be talking about the midpoint formula. And this is essentially just a formula that, given a line segment, allows you to find the midpoint of that line segment. And we'll introduce the midpoint formula, derive the midpoint formula, and then eventually see an example of how this can be used for an application. So to find the midpoint, we'll illustrate the concept first by drawing a graph. So if we have a graph and we have 2 points on the graph and a line segment connecting them, then the midpoint is the point in the center, so that both segments, the two segments now defined by that midpoint, have the same length. So that is, this length is the same as that length. And we can actually derive a formula for explicitly what this point has to be by drawing two triangles in our picture. All right, so when we draw these two triangles, we notice that we have two horizontal lines that are parallel, since all horizontal lines are parallel. And that's going to then tell us by the corresponding angles theorem that these angles are congruent and then similarly, this angle and this angle also have to be congruent. And that's enough to show by angle side angle that we have two congruent triangles. And those are just some facts from high school geometry as a justification for why we can then say that with the midpoint, if this point here is x1, y1, and this point here is x2, y2, and the point in the middle is just xy, then we have x minus x1 equals x2 minus x, and y minus y1 equals y2 minus y. And this is a good point to pause and think about why this is necessarily true. Our next step is going to be to find what x and y are in terms of x1 and x2 and y1 and y2. So we'll just add terms over. So we get that 2x equals x1 plus x2. So that was adding x1 to both sides and also adding x to both sides. And the same thing happens for y. So 2y equals y1 plus y2. And then finally, x equals x1 plus x2 over 2. Y equals y1 plus y2 over 2. And that gives us that actually gives us the midpoint formula. Now we know what the midpoint is in terms of x1 comma y1 and x2 comma y2. And that allows us to say that the midpoint of the line segment stretching between 2 points is x1 plus x2 over 2. comma, y1 plus y2 over 2. And as a quick example, we can find the midpoint between the points -1, 3 and 5, 10 just by plugging into the formula. So we look at our x1 and x2, that's -1 plus 5 over 2, comma, 3 plus 10 over 2. And that's going to be 2, comma, 13 over 2. And that's our midpoint. Now we'll do an application of midpoints. So midpoints can be good for estimating. So as an example, suppose you have a house that's 2,000 square feet, and you want to figure out how much your house is worth. Well, square footage, particularly in someone's neighborhood as well, is a good indicator of how much a home is worth. So if you have, so let's say you have two neighbors who both sold their homes recently. You have a neighbor whose home was 1,500 square feet, and they sold their home for $400,000. And then you have another neighbor whose home was 2,500 square feet and sold their home for $750,000. And you recognize that the square footage of your house is exactly in the middle of 1,500 and 2,500. So maybe you think, okay, my house, the value of my house should then be approximately the midpoint of the line segment between these two homes. So on our graph, we would have something where this is at 1,500 square feet, 2,000 square feet, 2,500 square feet. And that's 400,000, 750,000. Line segment connecting them. So you're pretty sure your home value is somewhere around here. So we can use the midpoint formula to estimate it. So with the midpoint formula, we see that 1,500 plus 2,500 over 2, comma, we add the next two together. I'm just going to write a K because I'm running out of space. And that reduces to 2,000, comma, that will be $1,150,000 over 2. The same as 2,000, comma, 575,000. So you would estimate that your home is worth about $575,000. So this idea that you can look at values around what yours is and come up with an estimate of what your home value is something that's called interpolation. And it's used throughout math and computer science to figure out the different values of what a function could take on, or what something might be when you don't know the exact value and you need an approximation. And sorry that my text messages keep coming up. I really need to turn that off on my iPad. All right. Hope you enjoy.